Hi everyone, this is Rosanna, Bright and Dusty, and I have just created this short Flosstube Extra. I was intending to just put it on my next video, but it ended up being about 25 minutes, something like that. So I figured I'd just do it as its own separate extra. I made some little winter enamel needle minders this week, and I thought while I was doing it, I could just show how I did it. So that is what this video is going to be about. I've been making some needle minders out of these little enamel charms, and I figured since I'm doing it, I may as well do a little tutorial in case anyone is curious how I'm doing it. And I'm just going to tack this on to my next video because I don't think it's going to be very long. So anyway, I got this idea. I mean, I know other people have made videos about making needle minders out of pins and such. So it's not a new idea, and I'm sure this isn't even a new technique or anything, but I decided to get some of these enamel charms off of Amazon. I'm talking about these winter ones here. These are charms that have the loop. So these are for jewelry making. And you can buy them in these bulk lots. They have all different seasons, holidays, various themes. So far, I have these winter ones. And I also have these pins because originally I wanted to make needle minders out of the enamel pins from Amazon. I got these fall ones that I thought were really cute. And I started trying to make a needle minder out of one of these enamel pins. And I'll tell you the issue that I ran into. So I removed the pin. I tried to put a magnet there. And I'll show you another example. This is also an enamel pin. This is one I had found thrifting. Actually, both of these, the whatever it is, it just escaped my my brain here, but you know what it is. And these are two I found out thrifting. I was able to remove the pin. You can see the little area where it used to be. And then I glued a magnet on there. And that worked out totally fine. This one and this one are functioning for me as needle minders, no problem. Once again, there's the remainder of where the pin used to be, the hardware. So then I was like, well, why don't I just try to do it with some of these Amazon pins? It didn't work because whatever hardware they use on the back is magnetic. So, and it was just going to be a little bit too difficult for me to try to grind all that down and get it totally removed. I already ground it down a fair bit, but it was still magnetic. The magnets, because it was being attracted to this raised area, they were not laying flat, and they were not staying put. So I kind of gave up on that. I decided, okay, I'm not going to be able to use these pins the way I intended, which is a shame because, as you can see, they are a little bit bigger than the charms. So I kind of wanted to use the pins because I thought, well, they'll make cuter needle minders because they'll be a little bit bigger. But because I ran into that obstacle with the hardware on the back, I just decided to scrap that idea. And that's when I ordered the winter charms. Now, Really cute winter charms. This one I have completed. You can see I used a really tiny magnet on the back. This is a 1/4 inch. Here is the box that this comes in. It says 1/4 inch. And these are the strong ones. The neodymium. I hope I'm saying that correctly. They are strong. I put this on my project earlier today and I tried it out with a needle and the needle was sticking to it very firmly. So I thought this turned out really nice. You can compare this magnet on the back of this, the one I made first. This magnet is bigger. This one is the 1/4 inch. This one must be the, I don't know if that's the 1/2 inch or the 3/4 inch. But it's bigger, which works better for something that has more surface area. But since these charms are so tiny, you know, it doesn't, a 1/4 inch is fine. So the way that I did this, I glued the bottom magnet on first. I actually have one in process over here I can show you. So this one's not dry. I glued it on. The bottom part of the magnet, I glued that part on first. I'm going to let it dry completely. I'm going to let it dry overnight. This is a little winter mitten. I'm going to let it dry overnight, and then I'll put the other magnet on there. I just don't want to, you know, risk the glue kind of getting stuck on the other magnet, and then you have issues getting it on and off, and you make a mess. So I'm just going to let this cure overnight before I put the other magnet on. So this is one I have in process. But yeah, this one turned out really nice. Here's the glue I'm using, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, E6000. I like to buy E6000 in the little tubes because this stuff dries out. Every time I've purchased one of the large tubes, I've only been able to use about 1/3 of it before it dries out. So I only buy the little tubes now. And that glue is very, very secure. You know, you're not going to have any issues with it. What else was I going to say? So the other part of this little tutorial I wanted to talk about, you'll notice the charms, they have a loop at the top because these are for jewelry making. But since I wanted to make them into needle minders, I kind of didn't want the loop there. It's not a big deal. Like, honestly, it doesn't really look much different once you remove the loop. But I wanted to take those loops off. And the way I do that is first, I have a set of pliers. And this is just a cheap, you know, mini pliers. You can see it has kind of a sharp edge here because it's meant to cut wire. So these are wire cutters. And what I do to remove the loop, you know, well, let me zoom this a little bit. You just cut it. I'm trying to find one that I can show a little easier. Like this snowflake, you would just put your pliers on the loop and snap it off. And you might have to snap off both sides of the loop separately. All right. Once you do that, once the loop is gone, it's going to look like this. The thing is, because you're snapping off a piece of metal, there's going to be sharp parts here. which brings me to my next point. Obviously, this is going to be near your fabric. You don't want any sharp edges catching on any thread, on any fabric. That is, a big no no in my mind. I don't want that. So after I snap off these loops, I have to smooth down that area. The way that I do that is I use a miniature grinding and buffing wheel. So I think I'm going to pause here and actually show you what that looks like and how it works. Here we are in my utility shed. Excuse the state of this table. I know it's a total wreck. Uh, but anyway, this is the miniature grinder. You can see here's my hand. So this is how big it is. It's actually quite petite. And it has a stone wheel on this side, and it has a fiber wheel on this side. And I went ahead and let's see, I snapped off the loop on the top of this snowflake. I don't know if you can see that, but it is a bit rough right here, and I can certainly feel it with my finger. We've got a rough edge, it feels a little sharp, and we don't want that. So the first part is just to grind it down a little bit with the stone wheel, and then the fiber wheel is going to buff it out and just make it really smooth. So I'll go ahead and do that. I will say, if you were going to do this, you want to wear gloves. I'm not going to wear gloves because I've done this so many times, and I used to make metal jewelry where I had to basically use this thing like on a daily basis. So I'm not really worried about my fingers right now. But yes, you would probably want to wear gloves. And there it is. That was really easy. It took me all of 45 seconds to do that. And it's very smooth to the touch now. And you wouldn't have to worry about it snagging on anything. And that is because of the fiber wheel over here. That's really, really good at smoothing out the rough edge. Now, you could also do this with like a handheld tool, like a Dremel. You could have like a stone wheel up here, and then they have other attachments. They have like buffing tools that you could use. That's another option. I don't like that because basically it's harder to control when you're, holding your object with one hand and you're holding the power tool with the other. It's just a lot easier to make a mistake. It's a lot easier to snag your finger or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility. It's just for me, it's not as convenient. It's not as fast. And yeah, I mean the miniature grinding wheel here. For me, that's just been an extremely useful tool over the years. Even though I don't make jewelry anymore, I still use my grinding wheel occasionally because it's very convenient to have something that can just buff things out. And yeah, I think I'm about ready. I need to replace this stone. I need to replace the wheel because they're getting really low. When they're new, they kind of stick out a little bit more, and it's easier to kind of control what you're doing with your hands. I think that's all I need to say about the grinding wheel, and now I'll pick it back up back in my usual setting. A couple more comments about the grinder. This is a 3-inch mini tabletop grinder. Mine is Chicago Electric. However, mine is probably about 10 years old now, so I don't know if they still make that brand. But there are other brands, and these are the two wheels and what they look like when they're new. So these are the 3-inch that are calibrated to fit the 3-inch mini grinders. This is the stone wheel, and this is the fiber wheel. And that's just fiber, Fiber. And these are the wheels that work for me for smoothing down metal areas. Uh, and then a quick little caveat about the grinder. I was being a little bit blasé about the safety. I will say, if you are grinding down metal uh, to any kind of like significant degree, that metal is going to get really hot. And that's another reason you want to wear gloves. I was just grinding for like 15 seconds there, and nothing was getting hot. I was just doing very, very tiny little applications to the wheels. But you will notice that it does get quite hot if you're doing anything more than that. And then also, it's a good idea to wear protective eyewear just because, especially with the fiber wheel, there might be little particles kind of flying around, and you don't want to risk anything going in your eye. So I guess those are my only comments about the grinder. I really like mine. And then just to get back to the needle minders quickly. So why am I going through the trouble to make these little needle minders? For me, it really isn't a lot of trouble because I already had the tools to do it. But I'm also just doing it for fun. And my idea is that I would like to make them, to give out at retreats or as little, gifts at stitchy meetups. I really enjoy when I receive a needle minder, so and I know I'm not alone. My thought is that I would like to do different seasons and maybe make little variety packs. Just because these are so inexpensive, like the magnets, the 1/4-inch magnets really aren't that expensive. And then of course the charms, you get so many for $8 or $9. So I want to do some different seasons and make some variety packs. And I think that will be really cute for retreats. And I will just show you quickly. I brought out one of the magnets, and you can see how it is kind of interacting with this pin back that I removed. So here's a magnet. And you can see it's just very strongly attracted to that area. The problem is this area is not flat, which means the magnet is not going to be flat. And I sort of tried to just glue it down here, but it wanted to move over here. So that was just a problem. And maybe it would be fine if I just glued it like that. But I just knew it was going to bother me that it wasn't flat, and I didn't think it was going to be quite as secure. And I knew it was going to annoy me, so I decided not to move forward with that. Once again, if it is a pin that doesn't have magnetic hardware, then it shouldn't matter. But in this case, it definitely makes a difference. Here is one I made with one of the ornament charms. And you can see I decided to leave the loop on there because a Christmas bauble like this has a loop. So I think this looks good the way it is. I didn't want to remove that loop, and I think it's going to be super cute when it's done. And I think that's basically all I wanted to say. The only other thing I'm going to do is once all the needle minders I made today are fully dried and finished, I am going to do a short clip just showing all of them and how they look. All right, it is the next day. Here are the needle minders after the glue has dried, and I think they turned out very cute. I'll show them in a second. I did have one problem with this one. The glue didn't take for some reason, and basically it just peeled off. The magnet peeled off the back really unexpectedly. Of all the problems I was thinking I would have, that wasn't one of them. But I'm wondering if maybe the back of this one was too smooth, and the glue just didn't adhere. The other ones seem to be pretty secure. We'll see. I'm going to use them for the next few weeks here and just see how they hold up, and if I need to troubleshoot anything. But here they are. This is the sweater, the hat, snowy mitten. I love these penguin ones. There's a couple different penguins in this pack. Here's the other one I did. And then I did several snowflakes. I like the snowflakes because they're a little bit bigger. They have more surface area. This one might be my favorite because it's a little bigger than the rest of them, and it's really pretty. Polar bear. Ornament. The hot chocolate. I really like that one too. And I think it's just 2 more snowflakes. And yeah, this snowflake design. And here is like a commercially made needle minder by Caterpillar Cross Stitch that I love. Beach houses, really colorful. But just to kind of compare the size here, yeah, the charms are definitely smaller, but not by an outrageous degree. Yeah, this one with the sleigh, it's a little bit bigger than the rest. Of course, let's see if the needles stick. There we go. No problem there. Yeah, and it's pretty secure. It's these little 1/4 inch magnets are stronger than you might think. And then let's I'll put one on my project here. This is Dreaming of Tuscany, Dimensions Gold Petite. All right, so there it is on the project. And you can see it's up off the fabric a little bit, which is nice. The metal isn't touching the fabric directly. It's staying in place, it's not moving around. And then let's put the needle on. And there we go. So I'm happy with how these turned out, with the exception of that little issue with the glue. I think that would be an easy fix. Just need to rough up the back of the charm a little bit so it's less flat and there's more texture for the glue to hold on to. I'm also wondering if that tube of glue might have been a little bit dried out. Um, when I make more, I'm planning to make some fall theme ones. I think I'll just use a brand new tube of glue and see if that makes a difference. All right. As a last little comment here, this is what I had in mind as far as what I was talking about with the variety packs. And after I make some more seasons, I think it would be cute to have 2 or 3 on a little card like this and a little bag to hand out at retreats as table gifts or something like that. And yeah, I'm just really pleased with how these look and how they turned out. One thing I forgot to mention is that some people will add like a sealant, like a varnish, a clear varnish, because after, I snapped off the loops, there is a little bit of exposed alloy in that spot. So, yeah, I could maybe seal it with. I have a lot of resin I could seal it with. I didn't do that for these. I mean, I don't really think it's that big of an issue. And like I said, I'm going to use them for a few weeks and see how they hold up. But that's just something to keep in mind. If you're changing pins into needle minders and you've got like a lot of exposed rough metal on the back, yeah, you might want to use a sealant just because you don't want to risk any corrosion and getting that, near your fabric. But anyway, I think these turned out really cute. I'm happy with what I was able to make out of these cheap little charms from Amazon. And yeah, if you've made needle minders yourself, I'd love to hear about it. And what you do.